Forgiveness is not about protecting the feelings of people who harmed you. It is about protecting your own future from being chained to what they did. Let's start with something clear and grounded. If grown adults repeatedly lie about you, steal from you, hit you, smear your name, isolate you, or knowingly support someone who does, that is abuse. It does not matter whether they sat in a room plotting. Intent does not erase impact. Adulthood comes with responsibility. If they knew their behavior harmed you and continued anyway, they were complicit. And complicit people do not have your best interests at heart. Part of healing is refusing to sanitize that. In many toxic families, the structure begins with a narcissistic parent who refuses to confront their own shame. Personal failures, insecurities, poor parenting, weaknesses they cannot tolerate seeing in themselves. Instead of facing those flaws, they build a system that hides them. That system has roles. One role is the black sheep, the scapegoat, the child who carries the parent's shame so the parent can appear blameless. Your normal mistakes are magnified. Your reactions to mistreatment are labeled as overreactions. Your strengths are ignored because they threaten the narrative. The story becomes simple. If there is tension in the family, it must be you. But here is the part people avoid saying out loud. The other adults in the family see this. They see the imbalance. They see who gets blamed. They see who gets protected. And when they participate in the gossip, the intimidation, the theft, the violence, the smear campaigns, they are choosing a side. They are not confused children anymore. They are adults protecting their own comfort. Often, they copy the narcissistic parent because aligning with power benefits them. They gain approval, resources, emotional safety. They would rather sacrifice you than challenge the person at the top. That is not ignorance. That is self-preservation at your expense. And the constant conflict inside these families is not accidental. When siblings are fighting each other, no one is questioning the parent's failures. When you are defending yourself, no one is evaluating poor leadership. The chaos is functional. It keeps the spotlight off the source. There is usually only one person required to apologize, one person required to grow, one person labeled as difficult, the scapegoat. That is design, not coincidence. So when people say, just forgive them, understand what they are really asking. They are often asking you to absorb more harm quietly, to lower your boundaries so the system can continue undisturbed. Forgiveness does not mean denying abuse. It does not mean pretending domestic violence, theft, or character assassination were misunderstandings. It does not mean giving repeated access to people who have shown you who they are. Carl Jung spoke about projection, placing the parts of ourselves we refuse to face onto someone else. In these families, the narcissistic parent projects their shame onto the black sheep, and the enablers help carry out that projection. If you fail to identify that clearly, you risk returning to it. And returning without clarity is how abuse repeats. This is where no contact or low contact becomes powerful. It is not dramatic. It is not revenge. It is accountability. When you step back, you are saying, I will not participate in my own mistreatment. I will not carry your shame. I will not be the distraction that keeps your image clean. You are removing your labor from the system. You are no longer available to be blamed, no longer available to be triangulated, no longer available to be the emotional punching bag. That is not weakness. That is self-respect. It also communicates something else without speeches or arguments. It says, I know my worth. You do not define me. My destiny is not shaped by your narrative. Most toxic families do not change because the structure benefits the people at the top and the people who align with them. Real change would require acknowledgement of wrongdoing. It would require someone saying, I abused you. I lied about you. I harmed you. It would require repair. If that acknowledgement never comes, reconciliation without change is simply re-entry into harm. Expecting transformation without accountability leads to repeated disappointment. Healing, on the other hand, begins with clarity. You identify who acted abusively. You identify who enabled it. You identify who stood by and watched, not to stay bitter, but to protect yourself. Boundaries without clarity are weak. Boundaries built on truth are stable. If this channel helps you see these patterns without minimizing them, consider subscribing. And remember, this is guidance for reflection, not professional advice. Now let's talk about forgiveness in a grounded way. Forgiveness is not a speech. It is not something you announce while resentment is still active. Forgiveness, in this context, is the absence of resentment because the injury is no longer ongoing in your life. And that only happens when exposure stops. When you reduce contact, your nervous system calms. You stop rehearsing arguments. You stop trying to clear your name in rooms that enjoy misrepresenting you. You redirect energy toward building what was delayed: your confidence, your career, your peace, your identity outside the role. As your life expands, the emotional charge shrinks. One day, you may notice you think about them less. When their name comes up, your body does not react the same way. The anger feels distant. The story feels finished. That is forgiveness. Not excusing, not forgetting, not reconciling without accountability. Just no longer carrying resentment because you are no longer carrying them. The abuse was real. The complicity was real. The harm was not imaginary. It was not your fault. And protecting yourself from people who have shown they will harm you is not cruel. It is mature. When you stop playing the role, when you identify abuse clearly, when you rebuild your life around your own values, something shifts. You stop trying to prove you deserved better. You simply build better. And that is where your power returns.